Okie doke. Welcome everybody to the Tuesday, August 10th, Ross Valley School District Board of Trustees regular meeting. We have quorum. We've got Rachel, Marie, and Shelley here, and so we will call the meeting to order. We are going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance, but beforehand, I just had a couple of quotes given that school is coming back, and I was thinking about the role of education in our society and just wanted to give us a couple of things to think about education before we say our Pledge of Allegiance. So one is I thought a very appropriate quote from Edward James Olmos that says, "Education is the vaccine of violence," which I thought has a lot of meaning for us going back to school. And the other one is from Michelle Obama, and it says, "The ability to read, write, and analyze, the confidence to stand up and demand justice and equality, the qualifications and connections to get your foot in the door and take your seat at the table. All of that starts with education." So on that note, and all of our dedication to education, let us say the Pledge of Allegiance together. Ready, set, go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Our next order of business is adopting the agenda and the time allocations. Do Rachel, you or Marie have any adjustments to anything on the agenda? The only thing I have is not that big of a deal, but C4 is a report out from closed session, but we have no closed session at this meeting. So that's the only amendment to the agenda, is that there won't be any report out from a closed session that we didn't have.
Thank you for catching that.
If not,
Good to go.
Yeah, I had no other changes.
On my end,
Great.
yeah.
So anyone, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it. Rachel.
Second. We'll take a vote. Shelley, aye. Rachel,
Hi.
Anne Marie.
Aye.
Okay, so with an approved agenda, let's go on to communication, and we will do public comment regarding items on and not on the agenda, of which there were a number. Hoping everyone had a chance to read them. And so the only thing that I wanted to let people know is there was one of them that was talking about requesting something go on the agenda, and just wanting to give a quick update for anybody who is watching this in terms of how things get on our agendas or don't. We cannot put anything on the agenda less than 24 hours before a meeting. And then the items that are on the agenda are both update items, but then the reason for the Brown Act and for that 24-hour notice is to create public transparency for the board to take action, because we don't want to be taking action with last minute things that people who might want to hear about them or be able to make a comment or something like that aren't informed about them. So, but I know that there were a number of things on the agenda, and I was going to ask Marcy, because while we can't discuss items that are brought up in public comment or take action on items that are brought up in public comment, if they haven't been agendized, the staff can certainly make some comments about that. So
Thank you. And just to add to your explanation, Shelley, it's not only take action on items, it's also discuss items.
Right.
So we can't talk about or have any agenda item which is discussed or taken action or whatever, unless it's properly agendized. But as you mentioned, as trustees, you can ask me if you did. I have an update, and you did. So what I can say is that we have become aware recently, but have been completely focused and immersed in getting our schools open for the new school year. I've not had the bandwidth to look into this at all. But what I do know from
Marcy, can you just say what it is that?
Oh,
just
sorry.
In case there's a bunch of people watching who didn't read all the public comments, just to let them know.
So a lot
what
of
we're talking about.
the public comments, a lot of them are surrounding West Marin Youth Soccer League and the change of the rates. that have gone into place. So sorry, I forgot to state
Very
that there were also a couple of public comments around schools reopening, which we'll be covering later in today's agenda item under D1. And so let me just start over then, sorry. We did become recently aware of the concern and the matter related to the increase of the fees. As I mentioned, we've been completely immersed in getting our schools up and running, started for the new school year. And what I do know is that our previous board approved a revised use of facility policy back in November 2019. And since then, so that was 2019, which was part of the 1920 school year. And then we have new staff who began in 2021. So Chris Carson, our new CBO, David Gieman, our new director of M&O, who did start in the spring of 2019-20. And then of course me, been in the district a long time, but facility use was not part of anything of my previous roles in the district. And so then we have, so our new staff, we don't have the historical context at all about around that policy revision or what communications may have been provided to any of our facility use requesters following the policy revision. And then of course, as we think about, then you throw in the pandemic, you have March of 2020, and until this past April 2021, our fields were basically closed that whole entire time. So then we have our new staff who started last year, they come on board, our fields are open, implementing the new policy, not knowing this historical context. And so what we will do is we'll definitely look into this. And until we learn more, we will not preclude West Marin Youth Soccer League from using our fields as they have in the past. And once we have more information, staff will update the trustees as well as West Marin Soccer. And just please note though, everyone, that because we are so totally focused on getting our schools open, which they do next Wednesday, August 18th, we've got to welcome our students and our staffs back onto campus and be ready to open those doors, that we will do so as soon as possible. And of course, I just want to close with, please know that we absolutely, certainly, and unequivocally value youth athletics, as well as our community partners and members of our community. And so we apologize for any inconvenience or concern that this matter has brought up, and we will be sure to get back and communicate as soon as we have more information. So until then, I think the resolution of holding steady on use for West Marin as they have in the past until we can get this resolved, we will do so. So we'll communicate directly too, and come back up to the board in a future meeting.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other board announcements? Rachel or Marie? Do you all have any other announcements besides your new puppy, Rachel?
The news of the month.
The news of the month.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And then correspondence and communication to the board. I believe that was also of a similar nature.
We had one, yes, that was related to the public comment item. And then another one came in from the Marin Healthy, I forgot the name of it.
Communities Collaborative.
Marine Healthy Youth Partnership.
Thank
Marin
you.
Healthy Youth Partnership.
Marin Healthy Youth, I'm so used to saying Marin Health and Human Services.
This is why I'm here to catch you.
Thank you. Health and Human Services are all over my head right now. And so we did receive one from them thanking us for the action that you all took, staff presented last spring, and the 6th grade booklets are being passed out this week, I believe, in accordance with Kelsey's email. So those are going out to all 6th grade families. It's fantastic. So can't wait. There's a link that'll be included for any families to go and look online. So we look forward to having that all out. That's great.
All right. Great to see that follow-up from all of that work.
Yeah.
All right. So no closed session, and we're on to presentation and action items.
Great.
Oh, I just wanted to make one also clarification for anybody who is still watching this, that the public, I was going to say, Marcy, the public comment items. So if people, this is because we're in this pandemic, normally public comments for items that are not on the agenda, people can stand up in public comment time and talk about items that are not on the agenda. And then people make public comments on items that are on the agenda during those items in the agenda.
Prior to the board taking action if it's an action item. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the correspondence and communication to the board, it sometimes feels like it's the same thing, but that's only because we're in this virtual world. Because normally you would have correspondence that's emailed in and the public comment would be in person. So just wanting to clarify for everybody. And that's why they're both by email and virtual right now.
Yeah, and our board agenda item, when you go on to board docs, does explain for those items. But if any questions, they can reach out to you or me, Shelley, or to Teresa or me here. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And as you said, item J on all of our board agendas explains all the meeting protocols. So if anybody has any questions or wants to figure it out, that's always there available for them. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
So let's move on to item D1, which is information and discussion regarding the school return.
Thank you.
Yay.
It seems just like yesterday that here we were talking about how we were going to be planning for the new school year. And here we are, the new school year is upon us. And tonight we have our Director of Student Services, Eric Sable, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Julia Wolcott, and myself, who will be providing an overview of our school's full return. And we are so very excited that all 5 of our schools will be returning to 5 days a week, full instruction, a return to our more typical activities and events on campuses. Of course, they will have to look a little different this year because, as we all know, the pandemic is still going on. But we are very excited to welcome our returning families, our new families, as well as any of our new, all of our new staff who we've been able to hire. And so we're looking forward to the new school year starting next Tuesday. And we are going to start off with Eric, who's going to talk about independent study.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back from your summer meanderings, whether they were local or far away. I hope they were fulfilling and wonderful, including you, Marcy. So the first thing we want to talk about is the Assembly Bill 130, which is add some things to the independent study requirements, given that we're out of the full-fledged pandemic. Of course, we're not out of the woods entirely, but school districts continue to be required to offer independent study. And us public school districts have a number of options. We could offer our own program. We could contract with the County Office of Ed or have an interdistrict agreement with a district providing a program. Given our very small, relatively small district size, that would be a struggle to put together a full-fledged program, especially with the pretty modest show of interest. So what we have done, and Superintendent Trahan has worked extremely hard to secure a master interdistrict agreement with the Nevada Unified School District, our partners to the north, for their TK to 12 virtual independent study program. And the websites they're available on this presentation for the public to view. So what that means is that if a Ross Valley school district student decides to participate in the independent study program, they're going to actually disenroll from our district, enroll in the independent study program through Nevada Unified, and participate in their program. Students do have the option and the opportunity to exit the independent study program with Novato during the school year, should they choose. And if they're at White Hill Middle, of course, they'll be enrolled or re-enrolled back at White Hill, no problem. But given the class size constraints in our 4 elementary schools, we can't guarantee that students would be able to re-enroll at their school of residence. And so that's just something that, again, Superintendent Trahan has made very clear in her email communications to the community, which have come out this week. And our district website reflects this information.
I
Are there
can
any-
add,
sorry,
Eric,
go-
that
yeah.
before you go on, is that because we do know that this option for independent study is going to be absolutely necessary for some of our families and a true option. Although, as Eric mentioned, our elementary schools are at or near capacity at almost every grade. What we will do for any families who do go and want to re-enroll their kids, whether it's during this school year or if they stay in independent the entire school year, then as soon as we get to only having one space remaining at their child's grade level, we will contact them to let them know that a new family is registered, or we have a request for a transfer from one of our schools to another. And so before we fill that space, we'll contact the family to let them know that they have the option to return. So just like with many of our policies, like intra-district transfer, inter-district transfer, or even when we've had to overflow students and have them return to their home schools, we give the families a 2-day business day notice for them to respond in writing that they wish to accept or decline. So that's, I think, what we can do to help support our families and know that we will do our best. Our goal is to always have kids attend their resident school. And so we just, that's what we're able to do to support them. So so thank you, Eric. You could, sorry, continue on.
No worries whatsoever. And to your point about returning, we have 5 days to place a student back at a district school once they let us know that they want to come back. So obviously, our hope is that we're able to serve all of our students, but given the circumstances, we know that there may be some families that feel more comfortable with this option, and we feel really great. Of course, not great to have them go elsewhere, but we feel great about having a partner in county offering this program. So kudos and our appreciation to Novato for that partnership. Any last questions from the trustees about AB 130?
I have a quick question. This is Shelley. If there are families out there who are not who live in our district, but who are not currently enrolled in our district, maybe they're at a private school or a charter school or something, and they want to go to the Novato independent study program, do they have to enroll in our district first and then transfer, or do they just go directly to Novato because they're not enrolled in our district? How does that work?
No, when you have a student who wishes to be on an inter-district transfer, they live in one town and they wish to attend school in another district, they do have to file an inter-district. And so when we have students who wish to do that, they do have to do, there's a level of enrollment that we require because we have to know that, for example, if they don't actually reside in our school district, we cannot approve a transfer. So we do have to be able to do that. Related to your part of the question about if a student is like currently attending a charter in the area, I don't know what happens in that case, but my understanding from looking at independent study programs that we possibly would be able to join with is that we cannot enter into, a school district cannot enter into an inter-district agreement with a charter. So I'm going to venture to guess that, yes, that would be likewise if there is a student who is in a charter, they can only get the inter-district through Ross Valley.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Okay, so if we move forward to slide 3, and that is about retention. And so, of course, we have board policy and administrative regulation around promotion and retention. However, there's some new wrinkles in state law per Assembly Bill 104. So essentially, it's really looking back and I think looking big picture. Our legislators are, I think, very wisely thinking about students that really might have had, a year of very little learning. I think we can safely argue that all of our immense efforts over the last year and a half, starting in March 2020, provided as good a platform as could be provided, both virtual and hybrid and in person. However, we are working under these new legal requirements. So the eligibility for any parents that may wish to discuss or pursue retention for their child this year is that they had to have been enrolled TK to 8th grade during last school year and have received deficient grades for at least one half of the coursework in 2020 and 21. And of course, the middle school, those would be the A through F grades. And then for our K-5 students, TK-5 students getting a standards-based report card, that's a bit more of a nuanced conversation. And essentially the process is that parents, guardians can provide a written request to the school principal for a meeting to discuss retention for this school year, and that the district has to hold that meeting within 30 days. Ultimately, it is the school's final determination based on evidence. But ultimately, here's what matters. What matters is that we're always about communication. And in this process of starting in-person school from day one, we know that there are going to be some students that are going to have some challenges or struggles. They may not be academic, they might be emotional or social or behavioral. This is a big change. And not to take away from the fact that it's also very exciting that on August 18th, we get to open our doors and for the most part have school as normal. So this is also information that again has been shared and will be shared with the community. And as always, the best line of communication is with the school-based team. And if a parent feels that a student really struggled last year academically, then of course it's the teacher team, the counseling team, the administrative team that really is that essential first line of support for them. Any questions about AB 104? Okay, terrific. Yep.
Right, really well. Have you received a lot of questions from parents about that or requests about this AB 104?
Just, I think a couple. That it's nothing that has been any avalanche of requests, and over the course of any given year, we may get a few requests across the district for either retention or promotion. And we always look at it as a strength-based process. Let's talk about where the child's at. Let's talk about where they might be having a challenge. And also too, what can we do right now to support them? What can we do right now? That's what matters.
Oh, good, thank you.
Of course. Okay, well, moving along to slide 4, health and safety practices. And again, Superintendent Trahan shared this today with the community and a wonderful welcome back message. By now I think it's pretty common knowledge, but if not, this will be an important information for our community, that based on Marin Health and Human Services guidelines, face coverings are going to be required indoors and outdoors for students and staff, regardless of vaccination status. And now there are some exceptions. If there's a medical or behavioral contraindication or exemption, then that family would submit that paperwork from a medical professional. At times that can come through an IEP or special ed process, etc. However, for the most part, we're extremely proud of our staff and students over the course of last year. Even our early intervention 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds for whom we're providing a lot of support on how to take part in this very important safety practice, not just for the community, but for the individual. So face coverings are going to continue to be the norm. And we are going to just continue to be fully committed to the health and well-being of all of our community members, staff, students, and parents. Vaccination status, all eligible students, ages 12 and older, and all staff are required to verify their status, their vaccination status. Whitehill is going to communicate directly with parents to start collecting vaccination status for those students 12 and older. REN Health and Human Services is not currently requiring testing for asymptomatic students. And for those parents, guardians who wish to have their children tested regularly, or if they've been exposed, REN Health and Human Services has a testing page linked here. And then we are going to continue just with best practices, hand washing, protective equipment, attendance tracking of students and adults in terms of which kids are in this room. In the event of an infection, we'll be able to know who is there around that student. Regular cleaning, disinfecting of those surfaces that we use a lot, and of course, lots of training, reinforcement, continued coaching and training of everyone about using masks, etc. But the very strict distancing guidelines from last year, the stable cohorts, all of those under the current guidelines are not applicable. So we're going to be opening up this school year still with some very clear and important, critically important health and safety practices, but we're going to have a lot more freedom of movement, and we're excited about that. We're not out of the woods. We're going to continue every day to focus on health and safety, but I think that things will be just a little bit more organic than they were last year, given all the many requirements. Any questions about those health and safety requirements? No? All right, moving along. Continuing with those health and safety practices. So this is what's really, really important. And we know that our community is doing this already. And I can just attest to having worked in special education all this past year, including last summer of 2020 and this summer with our extended school year program. Our families are really great about sharing with us when their kid is having some kind of a symptom. Now, who knows what it is, but of course, we have to be very cautious and careful since it could potentially be COVID. So those daily health screenings, students and staff will be conducting daily health screenings as a self-assessment before leaving home, and need to stay home when exhibiting any of these following symptoms. I won't read those all, but you can see those are quite familiar to us by now. And then if there's a child that, let's say, or staff member during the course of a school day who starts to develop one of these symptoms, then if it's a student, we will continue to maintain those isolation rooms. We'll contact the family or emergency contact to have them picked up. And then, of course, check in on how they're doing. So again, just that monitoring in every household is going to really be key. And moving on to continuing the conversation about health and safety practices. Again, we are, the students, I think, are going to be very familiar with this. When the weather gets colder, bring the jackets, but we're going to have the indoor ventilation, the HVAC systems are going to be remain set to optimize that outdoor airflow. the portable air cleaners are in every classroom. And again, windows and doors are going to be open to the greatest extent possible. And even as we already were doing, but certainly got more practice doing last year, taking our learning outdoors. And if a lot of research shows, in fact, that's really good practice anyway, even not in a pandemic. So we know that our teachers and staff and students are going to jump into that with a lot of just a lot of teamwork. And then visitors and volunteers, those non-essential visitors, including parent volunteers, will continue to be limited. Those essential workers will be required to adhere to all health and safety guidelines, and substitutes, contractors, visitors, or volunteers working directly with students will be should be fully vaccinated. So that's, I believe, kind of it around well, for me at least, for the health and safety practices. Any questions or comments before Marcy takes the mic?
Marcy, this is Shelley again. Are you
Yep.
going to be talking later about any quarantine practices?
Yeah, that comes up later in the slides. Yeah. Okay, so as Eric mentioned earlier, so many of the guidelines that were in place last school year are not currently applicable. Marin County Health and Human Services left them in. So all of the aspects of what Eric covered so thus far in our health and safety practices that are in place this year have been determined by Marin Health and Human Services. So we are following the direction, the guidelines, and the requirements that are found in the 32-point guidelines. And what MHHS did was, instead of removing the not applicable guidelines, the ones that were in place last year but are no longer in place this year, they left them in and specifically wrote not currently applicable, which is really super helpful, so that in the event that the situation changes and more restrictive guidelines or requirements need to be put in place, schools will already have them available, handy. And as we know that we have a lot of new students starting in our schools this year, and some of our youngest kids, of course, TK and K, have not been in school before at all. So all of the protocols are new to our students and potentially to their parents as well, if they don't have an older child who has been in school throughout the pandemic. And so I think it was very wise of MHHS to leave these in, should we need to revert back to them, or should we receive questions about why is that no longer in there. Nobody has to research it. We can specifically go to the 32-point guidelines and show, oop, not currently applicable. And so the interesting part about what, actually, I'll wait and save that for a future slide. So that's it. Those are those that are no longer applicable at this time anyway. And so, Shelley, to get to your question that you asked earlier in terms of quarantining, is we did last year have a decision tree for schools, and each decision tree was based on what tier we were in accordance with the old blueprint for a safer economy. The blueprint, as we all know, is gone, no longer in place. And so the beautiful part about the decision trees is they are there to help us know how to respond in the event of either symptoms of our students and staff, anybody on the campus, a positive case, exposure, or travel. And so this year, MHHS created one decision tree for vaccinated. And if you'll go to the next slide, Julia, and another one for unvaccinated. And so these are extremely helpful and useful to our families, as well as our school staff, to know how to react and respond whenever we have a case. My understanding is although these decision trees became effective August 4th, just like the 32-point guidelines became known to us on August 4th, my understanding is they might be in the process of being revised, only to ensure, as on the previous slide, the very right-hand bottom corner, addressed travel and quarantine for vaccinated it doesn't have anything on the unvaccinated. So as we all know, throughout this entire pandemic, things are fluid, they shift and they change. And so we have learned to be very flexible, adaptable, and responsive to whatever is coming our way. So any specific questions? I won't go through these specific decision trees unless there's a question. Okay, so what MHHS did put in place this school year is the Marin County Schools Mitigation Strategies Continuum for the 21-22 school year. And these are focused on the ABCs of mitigation strategies, which have been determined to be good hand hygiene, to get vaccinated when eligible, and to stay home when sick. And so on an ongoing basis, MHHS will determine where we are on the continuum in Marin County, as well as determine specific strategies based on trends in transmission rates, verified vaccination rates, prevalence of new variants, and impacts on the Marin County healthcare systems to determine where we are. At this time, we are in Area C. So Marin Health and Human Services has determined that at this time, universal masking is required indoors and outdoors for all students and staff, unless, of course, as Eric mentioned, there is a medical or behavioral contraindication or exemption. And so right now, that's where we are. When the situation changes in Marin, more information becomes known to MHHS, we may move back to B, hopefully into A all the way, or potentially even more restrictive. So we'll wait to receive more information about that. I do want to say that Marin County has been the lead throughout the state, at least, in helping schools get reopened. And I know on behalf of all of our Ross Valley School District, really appreciates the response, the support from not only MHHS, but also Marin County Office of Education, we had weekly meetings last school year. Those have started back up again, in which we can get all of our questions answered. They also will continue to hold meetings for the public, as an example, for our parents. The next one coming up is August 17th, and we will provide Zoom link information as soon as that comes out. So that way that folks can get on those calls and have direct access to Marin Health and Human Services staff and help us to know where we are. So really appreciate them and helping to guide our schools reopening. And what we do know, by following the guidelines that are set out by either the county, the regional, the state, the federal entities, is that we have been able to show that schools are a safe place for our kids and for our staffs. They're safe places to be. And one of the items that we will be doing is we've already created our COVID mitigation plan for the 2021-22 school year webpage. It was part of the communication I sent out today to all families. It lives, Sean, very creatively, has the link directly right on the landing page, front and center, so folks can go there. And that'll stay updated all throughout the year. And also, we plan to add more elements to it. For example, putting our dashboard back into place. And that is, you might remember, was where we keep track of any exposures or positive cases that are associated with on-campus transmission. And so we'll keep everybody updated there. And let me think if there's anything else I wanted to add. I think that's it. Any questions so far on this? I think now then we're going to shift a little bit away from health and safety protocols and practices and move into how we're utilizing and beginning this school year with some of our funds and our plans. So Julia, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marcy, and thank you, Eric, as well. And nice to be here this evening. Yes, along with all of our protocols and practices for health and safety, we have lots of support for our students, and that's more available than ever through our COVID funds. So just a reminder of those supports, very much so the bulk of our funds are focused on the humans who do the work of supporting our students. And this includes things like an increase in FTE for our intervention teachers. So all of our sites will have intervention teachers and also English learner teachers, and an increase in FTE for both of those positions, intervention and English learner support. We also have our MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports partners. We have 3 partners this year, a K2, a 3-4, and a 5-8. And those 3 classroom teachers who are moving into a TOSA role, teacher on special assignment, are going to be supporting our classroom teachers with tier 1 strategies, those first universal strategies that take place in the classroom that really help to mitigate any potential unlearned or unfinished learning, and to help accelerate learning and move things forward. We also very happily will have a wellness coordinator who will be supporting students, families, and staff. And we are looking to have as well support for our special education department, an inclusion partner who will help across our sites to strengthen the support of those students. And then in addition, we're looking right now as we refine and hone our MTSS system at different programs that can be useful in accelerating instruction, as well as assessment systems that can be put into place, and so that we can be really data-driven as we begin working with our students and supporting their movement forward. And then there's lots of PD that's happening as well, and that PD will take place some of it this week and some of it over the course of the year. We have some consultants that are helping to support us. And then also some of our own personnel here in Ross Valley. We have a very talented staff, and they will be providing support to their colleagues. And I think that that kind of summarizes it. We had a very successful summer learning program, our summer climb that Matt Katanzreed and Maria Lubomirsky ran over the beginning of the summer in June and a little bit of July. And a lot of our students who attended that program really enjoyed it and just had the opportunity to dip their foot back into school. And in a super positive way. And at the same time, we had a really robust staff there that was able to provide some individual attention to students and get them back on track. All right.
I think the beautiful part about what we've been able to do is to align our goals and priorities for the 2021-22 school year. So our LCAP goals, our COVID funds and plans are aligned, and the way that our budget has been developed and approved. And so to really support all of our students, our staff in supporting our students, and knowing that we're focusing on all of our students. So in areas of equity and access to education, and also for to make sure that our students have all the supports that they need to thrive socially, emotionally, and academically, as well as to support our employees. So part of our wellness is to support staff and families, not just students, but to focus on all of our educational community. So looking forward to this year.
Absolutely. All right. And any questions or comments from our trustees?
Oh, all good. Thank you, Julia.
All right. Yeah, definitely appreciate all of these updates and helping us kind of look forward into the year, as you all have been putting in hours and hours of time getting ready. So thanks for sharing all that preparation with us and with everyone else who's watching.
Thank you.
If the public do have questions, they just call the district. What would you like people to do if they have any questions or concerns?
At this point, because school is starting and a lot of the questions that have been coming in are site specific, So I would highly suggest that folks start with their school. And of course, in the event that the school staff is unable to answer their questions, they'll be sure to reach out here and so on. And so we'll go from there and see how it goes. And we'll continue to just communicate regularly about any changes with our school community, and also to keep our COVID mitigation 2021-22 page updated and accessible to all members of our school community, as well as to our larger Ross Valley community of San Anselmo and Fairfax, and a couple of addresses in San Rafael.
All right. Thanks. Anything else on this item before we continue on with the meeting? Nope. All right. We now have a resolution to consider about reducing or discontinuing certain and particular kinds of classified services for the 21-22 school year. Marcy, do you want to?
Thank you.
Whoever is going to.
Yeah, I'm doing this one. So over the past few years, as we all know, the district has been experiencing declining enrollment. And what we do know, especially from our budget workshop we had last spring, as well as in our budget presentation from our chief business official, Chris Carson, is that when you're in declining enrollment, what that means for our school district is that we do not, our funding is based on the number of students who are enrolled in our classrooms. And when we have declining enrollment, that means that we don't continue to bring in the same amount of money that we had the previous year or years. And so with declining enrollment, what we do is we take a look every time at our budget and what do we need to do with the position. In analyzing that and knowing that we're looking forward to our increased enrollment this year as it's looking right now, but knowing that there are historical trends in the district, as well as forecasts for over the state of California for the next coming years, that we want to be very mindful of correcting where we are right now, which is in a structural budget deficit. And what that means is if you continue to spend more money than you bring in, then you are going to be upside down at some point. It's probably the easiest way to say that. And we, as one of our other priorities, is always to be fiscally prudent and to keep our district fiscally stable and healthy. And so staff, every time there is a vacancy, even if we're not in the place where we know that we're actively taking budget remedies, is that we look at positions and determine, do we need the position in its current capacity? So what staff has done upon the resignation of a student services staff assistant is to take a look at the position, the work duties, the workload. So when we're looking at a layoff, it's either due to lack of funds or lack of work. And so where we are right now is exactly what the law allows us to do. And so we're looking to reduce the student services staff assistant position from 225 days to 199 work days. The position will still be 8 hours a day. And so therefore, because we are keeping it an 8-hour position and only reducing the number of total days, there is a budget savings, but the position remains a full-time equivalent. And so it's currently vacant. And so there will not need to be any notice to any employee that this reduction is going to be taken, of course, upon your approval, if that's the way you do go with this. And I do want to point out there's a resolution here. And originally this agenda item was going to be on the August 3rd board meeting, but when we canceled that meeting, I did not update the resolution accordingly. So if we can notice that the only corrections that need to be made to the resolution are the date of the board meeting. It says August 3rd, the board meeting is August 10th, and the effective date of the layoff resolution, should it be approved, which is going to be tomorrow, August 11th, not August 4th. And so as you go forward in asking any questions or motioning to approve and take a vote, if you will please do so with a correction to the date of the board meeting, August 10th, as well as the implementation date, August 11th. Any questions?
I don't.
I had a quick one.
Go for it, Rachel.
Are you looking for a position to fill? Like, are you trying to fill this?
We absolutely. So this assistant supports our Director of Student Services, Eric Sable. And so without an assistant, there is no way that he can get the work done. Accordingly, if you don't fill a position or you lay off a position fully, the analysis that we have to go through is what work isn't being done. And so that's that full analysis that we do before we ever come forward to reduce or eliminate a position, is to do an analysis of what amount of time do we actually need in the position. So I gave notice to our CSEA, our classified union, and they did ask to bargain the effects of the layoff. So we met, we have an approved agreement that goes through with that. And basically what it does, and our agreement sits with the law and the Public Employment Relations Board rulings that you cannot give away bargaining unit work to volunteers, to other employees.
Yes.
And so you have to be really careful when you're looking at a layoff, is to ensure that you're not giving that classified work away to other employees, volunteers, outside entities, contractors, that kind of thing. And so Eric and I did do an analysis and a review to know that we do believe he will be, and the department, all staff in the Student Services Department will be fully supported with a 199 workday position. Great question.
Mercy.
Any
Marie,
other questions?
Marie, do you have any other questions? No. No, I don't have any other questions either. I definitely appreciate Marcy, you and all the rest of the staff being so thoughtful when we do have vacant positions, and thinking forward in terms of both the current impact and then the long-term impact, knowing kind of our enrollment and the way that impacts our finances. So I appreciate taking a look at that, and just also reiterating that our declining enrollment is really part of an overall state pattern for declining enrollment. So it's
And I forgot to mention, that's been exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. I saw an article in which it talked about California being the hardest hit state in the United States, with a number of students who are no longer attending California schools. So the pandemic has certainly exacerbated what was originally thought to be a decline in enrollment in California. Seems to be happening faster, at a faster rate than originally believed.
all right. If there are no other questions, then we will entertain a motion that would include the date amendments that Marcy had mentioned on the resolution. If anybody wants to.
I can go ahead and make a motion that we adopt a resolution 0121-22 with the amendment that we change the board date to today's date, and item 2 that we change that to effective date is tomorrow, August 12th. Is that 12th? 11th, sorry, 11th. And today is the 10th. So that's their part.
Okay.
And I second. Thank you, Rachel, for having to say all of that. Very long.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote. Rachel.
Aye.
Marie.
Aye.
And Shelley, aye. Okay, so that resolution passes, and we can move forward in getting a person hired.
Thank you.
All right, and so the next item is an update on our 45-day district budget update in response to the final state budget adoption.
And thank you to Chris for preparing the revision, as well as to providing a report this evening. Take it away, Chris.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss I'm sorry, I'm trying to get sharing my screen. I should have the document shared right now.
Yep.
Okay,
It's
good.
working.
All good.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the 45-day budget revision. What you'll be doing tonight is just getting an update on it. There's no formal board action that needs to happen. And the other thing that is a little unusual is you won't see our state forms, because it's also not required. And so The whole purpose behind the 45-day budget revision really is to just provide an update should there be some material changes based upon the adopted budget that is approved by the state and the governor. And so when we look at the 45-day budget revision, there are 4 areas that are impacting our budget that would be, when taking them as a whole, become material revisions. And so the first is the unemployment insurance. The second is the transitional kindergarten changes. Third is an expansion of the ELO program, Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. It's something new that he added. And then the last is the Child Nutritional Services expansion and a grant that comes with it. And so as we look first at the unemployment insurance, what happened with that is at the May revision, we had a 1.23% unemployment insurance rate. And what that is for every dollar that we spend in salaries on all of our staff, we have to pay to the state 1.23% of our total payroll for unemployment insurance. And that was an increase from previous of 0.05%. And so we had seen this really large increase as a result of COVID. And there was a pretty large outcry to the state about it because they had also prohibited a lot of districts from doing layoffs at the same time as this large increase in unemployment insurance impacted us. So it really didn't make sense. And the state took a look at it and they lowered, when they adopted the budget, that unemployment rate down to 0.5%. So that will impact our general fund budget. When looking at transitional kindergarten, one of the things that the governor added at the last minute is an expansion of the universal, what he calls the Universal Transitional Kindergarten Program. We currently have a transitional kindergarten program, but it only is for children that are born will be 5 between September 2nd and December 2nd. It's only basically a 3-month window. And what they will be doing is expanding that over several years. And so next year it would include an additional 3 months worth of children. It would expand that way until we pick up 12 months worth of children in the transitional kindergarten program. The other thing is that class sizes would be capped out in 22-23 of 12-1 in transitional kindergarten and 10-1 in 23-24. And so those are really large drops in our class size ratios. And so one of the things that they have put in are provisions that they would have to actually fund it. If they don't, then you wouldn't have to implement this. But when looking at the adopted budget, they did provide some one-time funds for planning of this implementation process. And that's what you see in this next slide. They're calling it the California Pre-Kindergarten Planning and Implementation Grant. What it really is, and you can kind of see it off to the side, it's a state preschool or TK programs is where you can use it. It's one-time funds, it's $100,000, and it's to expand that TK program. And now I mentioned a moment ago that Child Nutritional Services had an expansion of their program as well. And they did, but what they will be doing is expanding so that all children in the state of California will be afforded a free meal for lunch and breakfast, but that doesn't take effect until the 22-23 school year. And in the meantime, what they have done, and you can see that here to the left, they have provided one-time funds, and it's $25,000 for our district is the estimate, and it's for infrastructure upgrades. And the reason for that is if you are increasing the number of meals that you potentially are having to provide for children, you might have to do some infrastructure changes to your existing kitchens, whether you have to increase your refrigerator, freezer space, you have to make revisions to how you cook. Just every district is different, but they have provided this funding. And so that does ultimately impact the Ross Valley School District budget. In terms of the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, this is actually a new program that the governor is putting in, and it is designed to provide basically there's an existing program, which is ACES, that a lot of districts have, but that's generally in more urban areas and rural, which would basically be a 6 to 6 program, a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. program. And they're trying to expand the amount of time that children that are considered unduplicated students, so it would be your English language learners, your students living in poverty, that they are afforded additional services at schools. And it would be a 9-hour day that would be required basically every day. And you would also have to look at having during periods that you do not have school. So during summer break, during potentially winter break, spring break, you would have to offer at least 30 days of at least 9 hours a day. And then there's some staffing ratios on that. And you also have to adhere to the ACES program regulations, which are pretty stringent. But I do want to point out that the Ross Valley School District does not have a ACES program. And as you start to calculate out what the amount is that we would be eligible for, it becomes very difficult for the district, as it would be for the district on a transitional kindergarten at those staffing ratios, 12 to 1 and 10 to 1. We had done some preliminary numbers, and the 12 to 1, if we don't get any additional funding, we would have to have full classrooms in order to just break even to pay for the teacher. And at 10 to 1, we would actually lose money. So there would have to be some pretty large dollars that come to the district, including in the CLO program, for it to pencil out for the district. And when looking at this ELO program, it's really designed to provide those services, excuse me, again, for those unduplicated pupils. So they're going to provide additional funding in larger amounts to districts with high unduplicated pupil counts that are 80% and above. Our district is right around 12%. So we're kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum. And so we're not going to qualify for those larger amounts that are shown here. So the reason I point that out is because, you know, you may hear in the news that there's this new program, but it doesn't necessarily impact a district like Ross Valley as much as it might say districts that are in the north, I'm sorry, the East Bay or some other areas. And so when looking at specifically, you know, what, you know, Chris, you've told me all about all of these programs and what the impacts are, but what do they actually mean to the budget? And so when looking at the SUI expenses, it would mean about $113,000 decrease in our general fund. Now that's split between unrestricted and restricted, and I do have that to break that apart, but that, you know, that's a fairly significant decrease in our expenses. When looking at the other state revenues, and you will see an increase in of $100,000 for a TK planning grant and $139,000 for our ELO program. Now, again, if we do not get additional funds beyond these dollars that they're talking about, they may not fund themselves. And so when looking at how I've put these in the budget right now, I've simply put them in as revenues. I haven't put the other side because I don't know if we'll actually be spending the dollars as we move forward. If we can't afford the program that's existing, it doesn't necessarily make sense to roll out and spend these planning dollars. So we'll be really, really taking a look at these programs in much greater depth. And there's been a lot of discussions in the county regarding these as well. And then I've only shown the general fund because that's where your larger changes are. I just want to point out that the cafeteria fund, which is the CNS, does have a $25,000 change as well. It just won't be reflected in this next slide that you're going to see. So as we look at our revenues and expenses, up here at the top, you see 239,000 for other state revenues as a change. That's the increase in our other state revenues for the $100,000 TK planning grant and the $139,000 for ELO. And then as you go down, you'll see the employee benefits. You'll see it broken apart, the 113,000 that I talked about. You see the impact on the unrestricted and the restricted side. And so when I talk about unrestricted and restricted, your largest programs on the restricted side that have staff are your special ed department, but you also have others like your Title I funds, which might be have a small amount of salaries in there. And so that's why you end up with that break apart, but it is a total net of 113,000 change in the general fund for employee benefits. And so then currently, without including any additional expenses for those two other programs, the ELO and the transitional kindergarten, you do end up with a net change in the fund balance. Again, some of it, a large portion of that is on the restricted side of 352,000, and on the unrestricted side of just of that 352,000, 59,000. So there were a lot of good things in the 45-day budget and some questions, and we'll be working our way through those numbers with the county and with the state as we start to find out more about what these programs really entail. And with that, do we have any questions?
No, I think those are helpful. I'm glad to hear that it's a countywide conversation. So for districts that have, very different groups of students, maybe there's ways of working together in different districts. I don't know, but just depending on how it works. And hopefully the state will recognize that they need to fund the requirements that they put on districts going forward.
And,
so fingers crossed on that.
And one of the other impacts of decreasing the class size for transitional kindergarten is not right now in our district, but later on, we could very well have facilities impacts. We don't have enough classrooms to house all of our students. So once our district begins to go back up in enrollment, which, according to our historic decrease and increases that we go through, dips and peaks and valleys, is that our facilities might very well be impacted, and we won't have space for all of our students, our art, music, daycare programs on our campuses. So that's another element too, in terms of total funding that would come in.
And that's an excellent point that Marcy's making, because if you look at that $100,000 TK planning grant, it also specifically says that you can't use it for facilities. Well, you have a number of districts in the state that have no space, and you throw in that class size of 10 or 12 to 1, and they're going to have to put in classrooms, and where do they get those dollars?
Yeah.
So there's a much bigger discussion up and down the state that's also having ripple effects on how we spend these dollars, or if we spend them.
Marie?
And Chris, I was just wondering, I think I read somewhere as well that for those TK classes, don't we need to have more like small bathrooms attached to the classroom? There is also like something around that.
It would be similar to the kindergarten requirements.
It's like the same as a K, right? Okay.
Yeah.
How do the class size ratios work out if you have a combined TKK? Because I know we've had that in the past where we've had combined TKK, but now if they've got different ratios, what happens with that?
You always go towards the smaller class size,
Ooh, okay.
which would mean that your class size maximum would be 10 or 12 to 1, whatever year we're in. And it's the same if you were to have, say, a 3-4 combo class, where your maximum size is, and I'm doing it just on the state maximums, 24 to 1 for TK through 3rd grade, or higher in the upper grades in 4th through 5. And you would actually have to have a class size of 24 to 1 if you have a 3-4 combo.
Got it. So it also makes it trickier to have a TKK combos as well, in terms of how to deal with different enrollment patterns.
Correct.
And as we've talked about, not in our board meetings, but historically in the district, is students don't come in nice, tidy little packages of getting 24 students in each grade level or each class that we have. They don't. And so, we have, and that's where it does impact, because for our district, where we're funded based on the number of students, that's how we staff. We staff in accordance with our enrollment. We don't have the luxury based on our funding to be overstaffed, if I can word it that way. So we do have to staff in accordance with our enrollment, and in some cases extremely tightly. And as Chris mentioned, there's a state requirement for maximum class size in 4th and 5th grades, as an example. And it's 30. And in our district, we've actually negotiated a lower class size. So our maximum class size in 4th grade and 5th grade is 28. And how we landed on that class size was when we look at the class size max that's required by the state of 24, and then you move into 4th grade, you don't always have, our district, we did a full budget analysis. If our 3rd grades were all full at 24, then we would be okay fiscally at maintaining that 24 in 4th and 5th grades all the way throughout. And then when our kids get to middle school, then of course our class sizes get larger, but we're also having 4 feeder schools into our middle school. So that made a lot of sense to keep that class size cap. So it's a very tenuous or tricky situation for our district. And it does cause us to often have, as you mentioned earlier, is what about having a combination class? And so we do have combination classes pretty much at every single one of our schools. And in fact, one of our schools this coming year will have a combination class at every grade level. And so, and I'm talking about elementary. And so this, we staff, and as we mentioned, when you have a lower class size, our class size maximum, we negotiated with our union that when we have a combination class, the combination class itself will be at least 2 students below the class size max. So if our maximum is 24, then our combination class would be at 22. In 4th and 5th grades, class size max 28, combination class 26. And so we're constantly evaluating. Our enrollment is in flux. We have an enrollment meeting tomorrow, at which time we will be reviewing enrollment at all of our schools, as well as transfers and potential overflows if we're over-enrolled. And so this timely topic tonight that Chris has on the agenda is very timely, because as we can see, the impacts on our budget of everything and are important and for us to pay attention to and notice. So we'll come back later once we get the school year started and do an enrollment and have a specific agenda item around that.
Right. Yeah, one more question on that, Marcy. I can't remember if it was last meeting or the previous meeting, we approved some services for how to have a kind of a demographic projection study. When will we get result for that? Is it like mid-September or something like that? Or when, can you remind me the timeline for that? That would be timely to have that conversation at that, there's no hurry right now, but it would be like, okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
I submitted the contract to them the following day, and I don't have that timeline yet, but I will get back to you with that. I will follow up with that.
Yeah,
tonight.
No rush on my account, but I'm just thinking the long-term planning is definitely that conversation would just fall nicely with that as well, right?
Absolutely.
And Chris, when is the next budget revise coming down the pike?
The district always, and these are the requirements within the state, they're basically budgets every 3 months. And so we just completed one in June, which was our adopted budget. The next one that we will do will be September, and that is the unaudited actuals where we're closing the books for the previous year. And then what you do is you roll in all your balances for the new year. And so that'll be the next one. And then after that, it would be 3 months after that would be our first interim in December.
Got it.
So
that's helpful to have that.
And Chris, how long does the state give you to like decide if we're going to accept one of these grants for, say, TK or the ELO programs? Like, how long do you have to analyze this information before we have to go one way or the other on it?
They really don't have a deadline on it because there's nothing to accept. They'll just be sending us the money. Really, the acceptance on our part would be, do we spend the dollars? If we don't spend the dollars, then they would actually take the money back from us.
And how does it impact our TK plan or our system as we have it now currently? Like how would it affect those TK students we have if we say didn't accept this grant? Can we still have it at our cap that we normally have?
Yes, it will not impact what we currently have at all. The current 3 months worth of children, September 2nd through December 2nd, are paid through the normal LCFF process, and we submit their attendance through the normal ADA periods that we would report. So we would report them as transitional kindergarten students in P1 attendance, which is done at the end of December, beginning of January, and then also the P2 attendance, which is done, it's as of April 15th, so it's generally right around the end of April, and then also our annual at the end of June, beginning of July.
Okay.
So would we be able to expand and like include younger and younger children as well?
Only if we went through and accepted that grant and rolled out the new program.
And Chris, if I can
Is
ask,
how we understand it.
and Chris, if I can ask it a little differently. So if it is unfunded, the lower class sizes, then will the expansion of the months continue on into the future years? And will then we be funded at the 24-to-1 and receive that additional funding based on the younger ages of the children?
That is an excellent question, which I don't know I'm prepared to answer. And here's why. Because really the way they've worded the legislation is that if they don't provide you additional funds, then the program wouldn't be expanded.
Yeah.
But the question would be, is it that they're not going to drop the class size down to 12-to-1 or 10-to-1, or is it that they're not going to expand? The way you worded that is you could still keep the class size at 24-to-1 and expand the program little by little. That would still have the impacts upon our facilities, but wouldn't have the impacts upon, do we collect enough money to be able to afford to run the class? The issue really is the class for the Ross Valley School District. The issue is 100% the class size maximums of 10-to-1 and 12-to-1.
Thank you.
That was a great question, though.
Yeah, maybe this will be a quick, easier one with the nutrition, which I am really excited to see some additional attention put on that, because I know there's a lot of learning data out there about the impact of students' ability to learn and nutrition. So I'm really happy that that's being recognized by the state. Small question on that. Is the state funded program, everybody hears about like hot lunches. Is it a hot lunch program? Like, do the lunches have to be like a hot lunch and that's why they're giving the facility upgrade? Or is the hot lunch kind of an old idea from the past that's no longer valid?
It's not really an old idea, but that's not really the reason why. The reason they're expanding it is because a district like Ross Valley, for example, we have a very low number of students that would qualify for free or reduced meals. So the larger portion of our families that utilize the program are coming in and they're paying for their meals. Well, under the new guidelines, you would be providing everybody a free meal. And so what will happen to districts such as Ross Valley is that we will see a larger, what they call participation rate in the program, which means that more kids will take a free meal or take a meal from us than what we currently have. And so you have to build capacity to be able to do that.
Got it.
That's what the upgrade dollars are for.
And those are like those warming oven things that we have and things like that for those.
It could be that. Yes, it could also be if it's a cold meal that day, You know,
Refrigeration.
Got it.
it would
Okay.
be a refrigerator.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks. Any other budget questions? Given that we'll be hearing this, it sounds like again in September. So if we have any, we'll have another opportunity coming right up here to come back and ask them. All right. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, Marcy.
Great, thank you.
All right. So now we are on to
Oops,
consent.
we do have to take action on this item.
Oh,
Oh, wait,
no,
I'm on the
no,
wrong
this is
spot.
just-
Oh, sorry, my
No,
bad. I moved
so-
on to a consent agenda item to
Ah,
approve it. So sorry.
Oh,
You were right, Shelley. So sorry about that.
yeah, no, that was just a discussion.
Nice try.
Next month we will though take action, I believe, to
In September.
yeah, in September. But now we will be on to consent actions, which is an action item, and we have 4 consent actions. Is there any clarification questions on any of those items before we do the consent on that? Not hearing or seeing any. So if there are none, we can go and entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and move that we approve the certificated classified administrative personnel actions.
Oh, this is for all the consent. We do them all together.
Oh, sorry, is that not in the line? Oh, sorry. Okay, I move that we approve all the consent actions. Excuse me.
And I second.
Okay, motion and a second, and we'll vote. Rachel,
Aye.
Marie,
Aye.
and Shelley, aye. All right, our consent actions are done, and we are on to board business. Any committee updates from trustees? Probably, is there anything out there? Because it was the summer, so probably not so many committee things.
I
going on.
have one.
Oh, you do, go.
I do, I know.
Go.
Let me pull up my notes real quick. So yes, Marcy and I both went to the Safe Routes to Schools just a couple days ago. It was a good meeting. There's actually a fairly good attendance. There's a really good mix of school and community leaders, Safe Routes to School staff, and then there are parents who just wanted to pop up and bring up some concerns about like safety for students and people walking, pedestrians in general. So there were updates from Safe Routes to Schools. They're working on rolling out in-person instruction. So the bike rodeos and doing in-person instruction at the schools, their staff are vaccinated. They're using all the masking protocols. So they're being very conscientious about all that as well. They are actively recruiting for team leaders. They push that a lot. So they're looking for parent volunteers on encouragement events. And they need them for Brookside, Manor, and Wade Thomas in particular. October 6th is International Walk and Roll Day. So that's a big community event. And so it's promoted all throughout the county and the nation. And they want parent volunteers for that, like to help, guide kids to school, things that they might need to make that a big event, kind of a big fun thing for the children. There is discussion about various San Anselmo and Fairfax projects that are going on for safety improvements and kind of status updates where those are at. Particularly for Hidden Valley and Brookside families, the Butterfield Sewer Line project will be wrapping up before school starts. So I'm sure there's plenty of people who live along Butterfield who will be thrilled, including me. There's a new public works director in Fairfax, interim, I think, and then they're hoping to be making improvements and safety changes, especially for kids commuting when there's like all the outdoor dining spaces. So they're being very considerate of the fact that there will be children riding bikes to and from school through downtown and how that impacts kids having those great little public parks for eating and stuff out. There was an update on the lottery bus passes for White Hill. Those have all gone out. There are some available for purchase on the website. It's open to Ross Valley Charter and Hidden Valley as well, students. So if they have kids at that, those are available, some extra bus passes. They said that a lot of kids and families are actually carpooling and riding their bikes, like getting to school in greenways. So that's fantastic. But it did kind of impact how many people were on the buses. And so there was more availability than they had expected. And then there was just some general parents who brought up concerns about crossings at Butterfield and Sierra and Broadmoor. And so I think those are places that a lot of us who just are driving around town know that are kind of hazardous. And then there's a campaign along Butterfield with the Eyes Up group who were really active last year and doing the signs after there was that fatality there. So they were planning to do a fall campaign as well and emphasize crosswalk safety along that route. So that was my safe routes to school.
Very thorough.
Yeah.
Marcia, do you have anything, Marcia, that you want to add from
I
that?
do not. Rachel did a fantastic job summarizing that meeting.
That's great. Thank you, because I know that that's going to be with full return to school. That's going to be a new thing, not just for the kids, but for our entire community to be, again, kid aware as the kids are out and about, moving around, getting to and from school. And we're just going to see a lot more of them on our streets and sidewalks and everywhere. So
Yeah, so the fact that the events that'll be and activities that'll be resuming on all of our campuses will be super helpful so that they have safe ways to get to and from school. So hopefully those 3 elementary sites will be able to fill their volunteer positions to help support the activities at those schools.
And who should people contact if they want to help out and volunteer with this?
They should contact their site's parent clubs, and if they don't know who are those leaders, parent club leaders this school year, then to reach out to the school administrative assistant or principal, and they can help them. But all of our parent clubs do a great amount of outreach of volunteer volunteer opportunities throughout the year. So all of our families will hear more as we resume the school year.
Great. Any other reports? Committees? Nope. All right. Well, we will have more of those, I imagine, at our upcoming board meetings as the school year for students gets back into the swing of things, and also for all of the committees that we're part of getting back into the swing. We have approval of meeting minutes for June 15th, and then we'll do July 20th. So June 15th, are there any edits or amendments for those minutes? Nobody's got any? All right, I will, yeah.
I make a motion to adopt the meetings from the June 15 meeting.
Great, I'll second it. Got in there on a second. Okay, vote Marie.
Aye.
Shelley, aye. Rachel?
Aye.
All right, so that one is approved. And then how about for the July 20th? I didn't see any.
I've read them and I have no questions. So I move a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of July 20, 2021.
Okay. Motion and second, and vote Marie.
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
And Shelley, aye. All right, so we've approved all of our minutes, and we can move on to superintendent and cabinet updates.
All right, thank you. And I realized for a minute I wasn't sharing my screen, so I put it back up there so folks on the live stream would be able to see those continuing agenda items if they don't have the agenda open on their computer or phone. And so we will get started tonight with the updates for this coming school year. And oops, this one didn't get edited either. Dr. Esther Salinas has resigned. And so I'll be providing the update for human resources. And so we'll start off though with Chris Carson. Any updates additionally from the students, business services and the no departments?
Just that we are preparing for the start of school, and this is the fun time of the year. This is where we're trying to rush around, make sure that everything is perfect for our kids and for our families, and it's really exciting for us as well. But other than that, there's nothing this evening.
All righty, so Julia, curriculum and instruction.
Yes, very busy getting ready and very excited to be welcoming everyone back. And on that note, on Thursday, we'll have our professional development day for our certificated staff, and we're very excited. They're going to come to White Hill for a welcome, and then they'll participate in 2 different sessions. One is on social emotional learning, and it's with Sam Drazen, who is the author of a program, SEL program called Changing Perspectives. And he's going to be working with our teachers on the CASEL competencies and really understanding all of the different areas of SEL. And then also doing a little bit of work with them on how to hold difficult conversations in alignment with some of our equity work. And then launching the program that our teachers will all have access to. Changing Perspectives is kind of a library of curriculum. And so our teachers have developed a lot of SEL work on their own already, or with their colleagues and their principal. And the Changing Perspectives program is kind of a nice way to be able to supplement and augment the program. And then the other 90 minutes will be spent with Deborah McKnight, and she is our new equity consultant. We're super excited to be working with Deborah. Deborah also works with the TAM district and actually has done a lot of work with Archie Williams. And so one of the things we're super excited about is seeing that kind of line of articulation and continuity there for our students and also for our staff. And she's just going to kind of do an introduction piece with our teachers, kind of set the stage, do a little bit of a revisit to some of the topics that we've covered in the past, like implicit bias, and just a little bit of a check-in in that 90 minutes. And we're really looking forward to that as well. And then I should also mention that the following week for our Classified Professional Development Day, Sam is going to do a Zoom training of all of our classified staff that work closely with students and focus on the facilitation of SEL skills. So we're really excited about being able to provide that for our classified staff as well.
Thank you, Julia.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric Sable, anything additional from Student Services this evening?
Absolutely. Back in 2020, for our extended school year program in special education, we were excited to have 10 students. And that, of course, is when pretty much everything was not in person. So we were proud as a district to be able to host that. And this summer, for 4 weeks right after school got out, we quadrupled that number to over 40 students receiving services from our staff and from partners that we brought in on contract to provide the whole host of services, from specialized academic instruction to OT, PT, speech services, counseling services. And it just was an amazing thing to witness, to see us come together during a summer when everybody needed to have 10 months off straight, sitting on a beach to hopefully recuperate. And I just want to recognize and acknowledge by name those members of our Ross Valley School District family that took 4 weeks out of their summer to provide this most essential service to our kids, from the 3-year-olds up to the 14-year-olds. Greg D. Giacinto, who is our middle school SDC teacher, Mark Solario, a program aide, Mr. Stephen McCrae, who is the 3rd through 5th SDC, Heather Wyndham, a program aide. We had Sarah Hom for the K2 SDC. Haley Barker was our speech pathologist. Cecilia Woods, a program aide at White Hill, and Autumn Arbery, helping out with counseling. And my respect and recognition to those folks that we brought in from outside the district to partner with us. Very proud moment for all of us. I don't have a tally on the number of students served in past years in ESY. I don't think it was ever more than this year. So that's something that everybody should really feel a lot of ownership and pride in what we accomplished under very challenging circumstances. So I want to thank all of those people. Just to reflect what Chris and Julia and Marcy have said, the start of the school year is a very special time. It's also behind the scenes. Don't look behind the curtain, because it can be a bloody mess. We're continuing to work really hard to get programs in place to get people hired, but what counts is what the kids experience and what our families experience. Life is messy, leadership is messy, but Ross Valley School District proves again and again that it's going to get it done for them. And what we're all focused on is for those TK kids, those kindergartners taking their first steps on the campus, those 3-year-olds that are going to come to our preschool for the first time, the 6th graders going to middle school for the first time, the students coming back who were on virtual learning since March of 2020. Just want them to know that we all embrace them and are so excited for their first day. So we're going to be all as a cabinet team, of course, running around the campuses, not just the first day, but I'd say the first couple of weeks, really experiencing that and just helping our staff in any way we can.
Thank you. All right, and last but not least, superintendent updates. So we have been busy planning, not just the physical activities of getting ready for the new school year and all the behind the scenes work related to updating our back to school packets, for example, and getting those ready to be sent out to families, but also hiring. So that's a critical component of starting the school year. So as you saw tonight on your personnel actions, we will have some more next time. Definitely some additional hiring has occurred since the agenda went live. And we're continuing to have interviews into this week and throughout the school year to fill all of our positions. And so as part of our work as the administrative team to get ready for the new school year is to do a lot of preparations and planning. And we held 2 retreat days this year. We call them retreats, but they're just actually gatherings, getting together meetings in which were dedicated and focused on the start of the school year. And that's the short term as well as the long term into planning for the entire school year. So as Julia mentioned under her report, we began working with our equity coach, Deborah McKnight, and had an amazing, fantastic, fabulous day where we started to take a look at our district equity plan and really delve into and take a look and make sure we were coming with a common frame around how we're approaching our work. And then to take a look at prioritizing, because our district equity plan, which we know you all saw last year in June, and we'll be bringing it back again, is taking a look at how do we prioritize, where do we begin with it in trimester one, and then throughout the year through trimesters 2 and 3. So we had some fantastic, great days. Our meeting times are now on hold while our site staffs come back to in person, and our principals now begin meeting with their teachers to plan for the school year. And so, and actually, I take that back. I don't think we brought the equity plan to the board. We have brought it to our district equity team, which consists of some staff and parents. We'll be taking it to our school staffs all together with a little bit more refinement, and our Delight team, which is our teacher leadership team. And then we'll be bringing it to the board to share with you. So sorry, missed a few steps in there. And so that very important work to ensure that our district equity mission statement is alive, well, in action, and that we are taking steps forward, not just planning, but actually taking action, moving into action to ensure that our equity plan is implemented. And so related also to the beginning of the school year is HR, which is a lot of us having our hands into it this year to be sure to focus on getting our positions filled. And then we haven't had a YES board meeting update, but Chris and I did meet with Chelsea and with Kafir. Chelsea's the executive director and Kafir the treasurer for YES, to get an update and to get an idea of where they are in their planning for campaign this year for fundraising. And so we look forward to our first meeting, which will be sometime in September. And then I've forgotten which, that's Rachel again. Rachel is the trustee on that representative to the YES board. And then I attend and Julia attends those meetings as well. So we'll be coming back forward with an update. And I think with that, I just have to appreciate all of our staff and families for everything to get ready for the new school year. I think a lot of times as we're ending last school year in being the varying elements of virtual learning, hybrid, being back in school full time, and then we had a break during the summer. So a lot of those protocols and procedures that are continuing families and staff are used to, we're going to have to practice those again. And then for our youngest students and our TKs and Ks and our early childhood special day class students, as they come in, this is all new to them. And so really looking forward to all of our principals hosting a meet and greet with their parent camp communities. And those will happen either via Zoom or in person over between now and the start of the school year, so that any questions, being able to see the schools, our kindergartens tend to have meetings ahead of time before the school year starts so that they can get used to the on-site campus, because we know that a lot of our families have previously participated in Camp Kindergarten. Well, that did not operate this last summer. So Camp Kindergarten classes, which gives our TK students, our kindergarten students, the opportunity to get familiar with the school sites, those programs didn't happen for lack of staffing. And those are run through the San Anselmo Rec Department. So for a lot of our brand new students, this is their first time to be coming onto our school campuses. And we have a lot of students who are in our older grades, but are transitioning from another school, whether it's in Marin County or out of the state, somewhere else within California. And so welcoming all of our students and families, whether they're new, continuing back onto our school campuses, as well as our staff. So we'll be looking forward to getting together and meeting and getting the school year underway. It's going to be a great year. Of course, we're not quite out of the pandemic yet. So we do have some things and that we'll have to be working with and moving forward into, as we talked about a lot last year, into whatever our new normal is. That we've certainly taken a lot of our learnings from last year and put them into place for moving into the new school year. So looking forward to a fantastic 21-22.
Are there, Marcy, definitely let us know when there are opportunities for us as trustees also to come and participate.
Oh, absolutely.
Something that we didn't get to do last year very much was to be able to be on campuses with back to school orientations or anything like that. And I know that you all will be navigating, having things be either in small groups or online or hybrid or with what's appropriate. But definitely let us know, because it would be nice to celebrate that back to school. I know, Rachel, you still have kids on campus, so you'll be seeing, Marie too. But I'd love to be able to, be out and meet people and enjoy that back to school.
Yes, absolutely. So when I talked about our returning to full operation of our schools, not just the events and activities for kids, but also for adults. They do have to look quite different, because as of right now, we're not going to be able to have food or drinks at any of our events, but being together, developing our community, enhancing our community is what it's all about, even if we can't have food. So we'll definitely let you know.
Any other questions, Marie or Rachel, on the update? Nope. Okay. Well, that's most of the content. Our last section is meeting review in terms of future board topics and board direction and a debrief. I know that we've got the budget coming back in September. Marcy, if you want to remind us, the next meeting is on
August 24th, in 2 weeks.
Okay, in 2 weeks. And I was just going to let, for anybody out in the public that is still listening, we usually do agenda planning the Tuesday. So the Tuesday before the board meeting date, so that the agenda can be posted on the Friday. So just for people, if there's anything out there that they want considered on the agenda or have anything they want to let us know, we do those agenda planning sessions the week before the meeting, just so people know how we do our agenda planning in case they want to be in touch with us. Anything else? Meeting debriefs, scheduling, future topics, board direction, anything like that? Nope. All All right. Any parting words, Marcy, before we head off?
No, just want to thank you all for being our trustees in the Ross Valley School District and supporting all of our work and also helping to keep moving us forward, pushing us forward into doing great things for our kids. So thank you all so very much. And we're missing Wesley and Ryan, but they will be back from their respective vacations in time for our August 24th board meeting.
And we might be able to meet in person next time, right?
It is possible we'll be visiting that at our August for our agenda planning coming up this next Tuesday.
Okay.
There is word out there that the rules are going to change again.
Yes,
to allow
this
for
is what I've kind of
yeah.
put it on the table. We might not, we might or might not, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we might just wait a little longer so that we start in person and then
Yeah.
have to pull back out. So we'll have an update on that.
Let us know.
Yeah, especially since getting school started is the priority. You guys are doing
It is very fair. I'm not begging, but just a lot going on over the last months in you know.
yeah,
The mask.
a lot of stuff is changing with that. in terms of-
Exactly. I'm going to put my mask just to celebrate.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you to Marcy, you and the staff for all the work that goes into starting this school year, which all those kiddos will be back on campuses before we all see each other again.
Can't wait.
And so good luck. Have a wonderful time. Enjoy all of the preparation and all of the kids as they come back onto our campuses, which is really exciting. So thank you so much for continuing all this great work for our kids.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, we can adjourn our meeting at, it looks like
8:45.
8:45. 8:45, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.